Before I talk about Superman in theaters now by James Gunn, I just want to say how pleased I am that not only has DC put out new Treasury edition for Superman in book form, but I was literally in a gas station, Sheets gas station, and saw issue number ones of not just Superman, but Superman, Batman, Justice League, a bunch of classic stories. Battle for the Cowl, Superman and the Authority, lots of classic books, not necessarily the out now items, but just things to whet your appetite to get you into the habit if you're not already there. And I must say, that is something I find quite pleasing because as a person who writes comics, I know the challenge of getting people's interest. And Warner Brothers has quite the advantage over me because they own known popular commodities: Wonder Woman, Superman, Batman, the list goes on. And so it always warms my heart to see people trying to get new fans for comic books. And so after the open rolls, I'm going to talk about the 2025 James Gunn Superman, meant to launch an all new DC universe. One of the first takeaways I have from watching James Gunn's Superman, and I must say how pleased I am with it, is that it is not a Superman origin story. He's been active and known by the world that he resides in for 3 years. And the reason I find this so pleasing is I knowingly and chose not to write origin stories for Everlasting Survivors or BC Brute because I remembered when I was younger turning on Spider-Man the animated series, and like there was no being bit by a spider, there was no Uncle Ben storyline. It was all action all the time. And that's how this movie started. All action all the time. And more than just starting with action, it demonstrated to the audience that it had faith in them to understand who they're watching, whether it be Superman or Lex Luthor, Lois Lane, Jimmy Olsen, the list goes on. The story just treated you as if you had the capacity to understand. And I think that is so genuine and smart because, like I said, there was a period of time where everything, movie wise especially, but even shows, I'm sure, was just so saturated with the beginning, with the origin story. And to me, while it is important to have a good, firm foundation, there are just certain characters, Spider Man, Batman, Superman, potentially those are the ones, but maybe others fall into the category, but there are just certain characters where it's like, you know, culturally where they come from. And even when you don't know what kryptonite is, it is so culturally relevant that you know it is a representation of weakness. And so that's one thing that I really strongly enjoyed about James Gunn's Superman opening is that boom, we're right at it. And with that, we open with the classic from the trailer scene of Superman damaged and Krypto taking him to the fortress to be healed with an ultra precise amount of solar energy, which I thought was smart because while he could have just waited and been healed via the sun, I thought it was smart that they have a an energy boost, if you will, for Superman built into the universe because there are times when a man of his importance can't wait to do things slowly. And I was like, oh great, okay, that's smart. And smart is definitely one of the two primary words I would use to describe this particular Superman. So, as the story played out, I often thought, man, they're treating this Superman as if he is smart, which I like a lot. But the other word, the other primary word I would use to describe him is, so he's smart, but he has heart. And those are two very good attributes to attribute to Superman. Because let's say that we were talking about another person's interpretation of Superman. Maybe I'd say stoic and strong. But that's not the world that we're dealing with. It's not the prior established DC Extended Universe. This is a whole new world of heroes. And on that subject, the additional heroes here, whether it be Hawkgirl, who was fun in action, Guy Gardner, who was fun incarnate, or Mr. Terrific, who was another smart but also capable and pivotal character throughout the story. All of the other heroes were so very important to what was going on. Guy, specifically, I feel like, was questioning. Like, that felt like his primary role. He was like, is the propaganda that Lex Luthor is putting out there accurate to a man who he's already friends with? I mean, it just felt very believable to me, the idea that a friend would confront his friend and say, hey, be honest with me, is this what's up? And yeah, so it's cool that Guy felt like honest, because I had heard Nathan Fillion say that his feelings were on the character is that, oh, he's a bit of an a-hole. And it's like, I definitely saw Nathan Fillion bring more to the role than just a jerk, which is great. Now, don't get me wrong, he definitely had jerk tendencies that were fun, but that is not the extent of the Guy Gardner Green Lantern character, and I just like that he wasn't one-dimensional. And even a character that could have and possibly should have been one-dimensional, that being Robot number 4, wasn't one-dimensional because the character, while he says, oh, you don't have to thank me, we're just automatons, and, you know, people saw that in the trailer. Again, I'm trying my best not to reveal too much because I think that it's worthwhile to go watch it. And so I'm just talking broad strokes and big picture stuff. And so, like I said, Robot number 4 that could have easily have been a one-dimensional character, even that character was allowed to have growth and heart, which, you know, Alan Tudyk is perfect for, because he's done so many voice acting roles for DC, it's not even funny. When it comes to so many of Superman's allies, whether it be Jimmy or Lois, Perry White, whomever, they all felt very important. Lois never doubting Clark, I thought, was splendid. It was the proper way to be. It's funny, she realistically seemed to believe in Superman more than she did herself, which I thought was an interesting approach, because it wasn't that she doubted herself as far as being capable. Like, when it came to her job, Lois seemed quite comfortable and confident in herself. But when it came to their relationship, is where she began to question her own contributions. Thank you for being here at Mr. Super Oz. This video is going out, and this channel only exists because I, Oz, founded Gamble Comics, which first release was Everlasting Survivors, a 68-page graphic novel called All Day Long. Available now. Follow the link in the description that will take you to gamblecomics.com. While there, you can get hats, shirts, posters, much, much more. But most importantly, the story itself. Jimmy Olsen, this might very well be his best, definitely his best movie importance, because, like, back with Christopher Reeve, he was very lighthearted, and it was nice to have him around. But let's imagine, if you will, he wasn't there. Would it have really changed the story much? I'm not sure. But here he has a tie to Lex's inner circle that really changed the whole knowledge base for the good guys. And I was like, oh, that's really smart and cool. And it's funny because Lois was shocked to find this out, and it's so relatable when you see something play out in that way. And so the standout performance to me, while I think so many people did so well, I think the standout performance really came from Nicholas Hoult when he played Lex Luthor, because this character's motivation, which I love that he's not afraid or ashamed to admit that he's jealous of the love and adoration that Superman gets, because this Lex, and he who he most reminded me of is the Lex Luthor from All-Star Superman, because when Lex is talking to Superman in the film, he says that maybe he'll go after the reporter that Superman keeps talking to, Clark Kent. And it was so reminiscent of the time in All-Star Superman where Lex is interviewing with Clark and says how that he has to feel less than being compared to the alien Superman. And I was like, it's funny to me that someone who is so smart can also be so self-absorbed that he doesn't notice something so clear, which is that Clark is Superman. I'll say this, though, for the defense of Lex not noticing. They do go well out of their way to clarify and establish why or how Superman is able to so easily not be noticed as Clark. They go back to some Silver Age logic with his glasses being able to deflect what people can perceive. And even without that, though, I think David Corenswet is the best at presenting two separate portrayals of Clark and Superman since Christopher Reeve, and it's really obvious, even as early as the trailer, when he changes the way that he speaks when giving Lois the interview with Superman. And I thought that was very well done, because it's something that we all know Christopher Reeve was skilled at in his interpretation as well. And so I'm always so hesitant or reluctant to go into major plot points for something that's still actively out. So what I'll do here is just say I give Superman by James Gunn from 2025 a spectacular 6 out of 5 stars, and I thoroughly recommend people to go watch it in theaters while it is available. It was the first time I ever watched something in, you know, the IMAX presentation, and might I say, it was quite worth it. The extra emphasis, the the spectacular visuals, it was top quality stuff. And I'll say, presumably down the line, there'll come a time when Brandon and Josiah and I, and you know, who knows, Aaron, maybe Jeff, any number of people might talk about the film in depth, because there are a couple of intriguing twists. One that I can totally understand when people are adamantly frustrated with, and another that I called pretty much from day one. And so, can you really call it a twist if you saw it coming? But again, like I said with wrestling, what's good is good, whether it's predictable or like, if it's good whether you can predict it or not predict it. And so, just because I saw or was able to predict something doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means that I'm familiar with Superman and comic book concepts. So I'm not even upset about the thing that I saw coming. And the big change that, again, I can understand people being displeased with, I personally didn't take as a bad thing. And here's the struggle is to say, do I talk about it or do I not talk about it? So I'll say this. Enough time has passed that if you're still here, you want to be here. And if you want to stop now, I've already told you that I thought it was good. And if you're curious, stick with me. So the big twist, the big change is that Clark was sent to, Kal-El was sent to Earth with a message from Jor-El and his mother, and the message starts out quite positive. You know, we love you more than air, land, sea, and all that. you know, our son, we have such high hopes for you. And then the message breaks up, and Clark never saw the ending until Lex breaks into the fortress, has the engineer and some linguists and all these people understand the end of the message, which is the superior aliens sent him to repopulate the Earth, take all the women you want, and yada yada. Not the Earth, but, you know, basically be fruitful and multiply, be their leader. And it's like, while yes, that's not traditionally Jor-El's message, and I've seen people go so far as to say, oh, Jor-El's been changed to Zod, I can totally understand the choice being made to have literally an alien who literally is not of, for, or from Earth think that they can conceptually send their son, who will be extra strong and extra special, to a place where that they can then either take over or be gifted the world because they're so special. And so it's like, is it not traditionally Jor-El's verbiage? Absolutely it's not. But is it understandable in the context of this story? 100% it's understandable in the context of this story. And so often I say, that's what I desire, is I want a story that makes sense. And so, because it fits the story that was told and it makes sense, I'm like, I'm for it. And especially if we never do other Kryptonian things. Now, conceptually, they could bring in Zod and he could say, hey, me and Jor-El, we were, you know, thick as thieves or whatever. But that still doesn't stop Superman from doing the right thing. It doesn't stop Superman from making the right decision. But if they never bring in Zod into the storyline because Krypton is gone, then I don't think that it's some big world-changing thing. As a matter of fact, if the only Kryptonians that ever show up in this world are Kal-El, Kara Zor-El, and Krypto, I'd be totally fine with that, because Supergirl does show up to pick up her dog because her cousin was watching it. And Krypto was so much fun throughout. There was a period of time in the film that he was taken by Lex, and it felt so natural for somebody who was watching a pet for a family member or a friend to be upset when the 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 pet goes up missing, and they need to follow through and be, a good caretaker. And so, yeah, I like I said, I give it a spectacular 6 out of 5 stars. I definitely recommend watching Superman. I've I just can't wrap my head around the people who have such strong negative feelings, because this is, to me, the right path. The concept of Superman catching buildings, allowing people to drive away, even wanting to protect creatures as they're in conflict with heroes, it's like, this feels like the proper presentation for Superman. And so, thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed. Come back next week. Later.